And let me see if I can do the transcript too. All right, here we are. Well, welcome to the third meeting of the Tucson Amateur Astronomy Association Binocular Interest Group. And I'm Jim Long. I'm currently the prime person on the group. Let me X out of that. It's covering my screen out. But tonight I have a topic that we're going to cover is called finding things, and I've got probably 30 slides, and we'll go through and we'll talk about stuff. And we always start off with a beginner concept. So let me share my screen here. Here we go. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Nope.
Can't see anything, huh? You just see me?
See you.
All right, but how about that?
There's your screen.
All right, let me close that. And we want this. Ooh, okay. Here we All right, bada boom. There we go. The binocular sky. Here's my standard template that I use for PowerPoints. And here's kind of tonight's agenda. We're going to introduce each other and talk a little bit about why we're here. These are the objectives for tonight. We're going to find things on paper. We're going to find things electronically. We'll talk a little bit about group issues, and then we'll talk about upcoming events. If anybody has anything that they want to talk about generally, we can talk about them in group issues. But here's kind of the beginner's corner. So if you want to introduce yourself, Nelsie and Rich, that would be cool.
Talking about Bob.
Or Bob. I'm sorry, Bob. That's Robert. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm relatively new to the club and I'm new to this group. And I talked to some of you on email and I bought a Celestron 20 by 80
Oh, excellent.
and with a tripod and I just got it a few hours ago. So right now I'm trying to understand how to make this tripod so it will be easy.
So there should be a big screw button on the top of the rail that's in the middle of the two telescopes that
Yeah,
you could loosen and then slide that bar back and forth to get it balanced on your
yeah.
tripod. And that helps quite a bit. Um, a word of caution, I've had two Celestron 20 by 80s and they're very sensitive to getting knocked out of collimation.
Uh-huh.
So if it was me, I would get a Pelican box from Harbor Freight and put them in there instead of the cheap little bag they send with it. Because I've had two of those now, and one I just had to send back to get collimated, and it was pricey to get them collimated. I don't have the right tool to do the screws in the back to make it work. So,
What's
um,
the box, did you say?
if you go to Harbor Freight,
Yeah,
I think it was the 3800 box that mine fit in.
3,800 bucks.
Yeah, and you just pick out the foam to the shape that you want to fit your binoculars, and then they're secure in foam and they're less likely to get knocked and your prism's out of alignment. So that's just what I did when I had a pair.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah,
But doesn't Star Arizona offer collimation?
they do not. In fact,
Really?
Star Arizona doesn't and Stellar Vision doesn't. I had to send them to a place. God, what was the name of the guy? Sudarth Optical Systems, SOS. And he's in Oklahoma City, and it cost me like $40 to ship it each way, and then he charged me $125 to collimate them. So just 80
Nope.
plus 125, you're almost to the point of buying a new pair.
Really?
150.
Yeah, so protect them. Get a $29 Pelican box, and you'll thank me later.
Okay.
But I still have my 20 by 80s. In fact, my grandson, who's 7, is working on the AL Sky Puppy program, and if he passes it, he'll have earned them. Those will be his. So we're working towards that. I have a pair of Oberwerk 20 by 80s that replace my Celestrons, and I'm pretty happy with those. All right, so Nelsie, you want to introduce yourself?
What do you want to know?
Well, where you from? What kind of binoculars you got? That kind of stuff.
I grew up in Canada. My husband moved here to do solar astronomy. Um, I tried to resurrect his old Mead with a pedestal mount, but that thing's big and heavy and clunky. So I got a pair of 12 by 56 binoculars for what? Thanksgiving for Black Friday. And oh my gosh, it is so cool because you just have to look and it's there. You know, you put the
Absolutely.
binoculars in between you and what you're looking at, and it's a lot easier to find things. So then I started tracking down Messiers, and then they got a little faint. So then I got a pair of 25 by hundreds.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, I have a pair of 25 by hundreds that are out of collimation right now. I gotta fix them.
Oh no.
Yeah, I have the nice wooden tripod and all that. It's just they're gonna be great when I get them working again. But right now, my 20 by 80s are my go-to binoculars. I love those.
Yeah. Do you think there's Pelican boxes big enough for the 25 by hundreds too?
I don't. I think you would need to get the 4800, which
Ah,
is a little bit bigger, and I think that's $59.
okay.
But you know what? Take them with you into Harbor Freight and measure yourself. I mean, that's if it doesn't fit in the box, you don't have to buy them.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
they have bigger Pelican boxes that you can get. But I know that the 3800 fit the 20 by 80s real nicely. So,
Okay, cool.
all right. So, welcome. Anybody else that I can't see now that I'm looking at this slide that's joined us? All right. Well, we're going to jump into it. So if you remember in our first meeting, and maybe the folks that are new don't remember this, we had a list of topics that we might talk about this next year, and the ones that are green are ones that we've already talked about. We pretty much had an introductory thing where we talked about how to hold them, observing aids, and astronomical league binocular programs. And we're here today. Target selection methods, very planetarium software representation. That's where we are today is with that. So in July, um, or August, we might talk about mounts. And I'm hoping somebody that knows more about this stuff than me would take that on and talk that night. I know that David Rossiter has a parallelogram and so forth. So I'm hoping that someone else will jump on that for me. That's kind of part of mounts. But in July, I've kind of tentatively set up a guest speaker. Kevin Busaric from Oberworks is going to come in and talk about this subject right here. And there was a question that came up recently about what kind of binoculars should I get? What are the first pair I should go after? We had a big, long discussion and email about it, but I figured it'd be good to get the expert to come in and talk to us and answer questions. So that'll be July 30th, I believe. Shopping, selecting. We might talk about this in August. I don't know. Um, those are some of the other subjects that we had in the list there. But then the last subject we had in here was a subject about books, and I've lined up somebody that's as a guest speaker to talk about books, and that'll probably be September the 24th. But we might have to start very early. This one we're probably going to have to start at 5 o'clock because he's in Eastern time. And this one he's in Atlantic time. So we might have to start very, very early there. And I'll talk about that in a minute. All right. So the first part of this talk tonight is finding stuff on paper. And if you guys have a question at any point during this, please stop me and just ask away. We don't want to wait till the end and ask questions. And I'm not monitoring the chat right now. So yeah. So who has one of these in their kit? Nobody started out with one of these? Well, these are useful because they'll tell you before you go outside what's in the sky on paper. You can rotate these by time and by season and by date and by hour, and it'll show you exactly what's going to be in the sky when you go outside. So it's called a planisphere, and they're very handy to have. And you can get real small ones that are 12 inches, and this is a 19-inch one that I have. But my grandson, I'm teaching him how to use it so that when he goes outside and he doesn't have any electronic means, he can see what's going to be in the sky tonight. All right. Who started out here? This is where I started out back in the 1970s. This is July of 2026. These are the things that are coming up, and you can see the moon going across the ecliptic for the month. July 28th is the full moon, and over here, the 30th will be our meeting. But you can get an idea of what constellations are up in early July at 11 p.m. This is what's going to happen in July by 11 p.m. Early June, it's 1 a.m. Late July, it'll be right at nightfall. This is what the sky will look like. So later in the month, the hours will decrease. So there's a really good discussion in here, though, about binoculars and things you should look for right now with binoculars. It's the Milky Way down here in Sagittarius has a lot of stuff to look for. M17, 21, 28, 22. And I looked at M22 the other night when I was at the Grand Canyon, and it was spectacular in my 20 by 80s. You also have M4 right over here. So there's a lot of Messier objects to look for right around Scorpius and Sagittarius, M6, M7. Over here in Ophiuchus, you've got M10 and M11. So there's plenty, M16. So and M11. I mean, there's tons. You could probably get 20 of them out of 50 in one night pretty easily. But anyways, so that's me. I mean, when I started out, um, we used sky and telescope, and I waited for it every month to see what the sky was going to look like and what astronomical objects. But I want to draw your attention to this little area right here, to this constellation called Vulpecula. And at the end of Cygnus here is a star called Alberio, which is a double star. And this little constellation called the Arrow is Sagitta. And right in between that are these two stars that are there called Vulpecula. And we're going to focus on that area a bit tonight and do different charts to find it and figure out what's there and find out what interesting objects are in that area. So I want you to put on your Wayback hat now. This is the Atlas of the Heavens, the very first star chart on paper that I ever owned. I bought this in 1975, and you can see that it's a little worse for the wear. It's got coffee stains on it and all kinds of stuff, but it's called the Atlas Coeli, and the epoch is 1950. It was hand drawn by this guy, Antonin Bekvar. So, and there's my name on it. It says, but this is also called a weird name, Scalantne Plaso. And you can see Scalantne Plaso is a really strange name, but here's what it looks like on the inside. And I know Doug Smith really doesn't like the colors of these kind of charts when you shine a red light on them. And I don't disagree that most of these colors of things blend away when you shine your red light on it. But I still liked it. I was using these to find things, and you can see how the sun has caused it a little bit to get warped and warbled. But it did its job for the longest time. And in 1976, we observed something, and I documented it in my chart in Vulpecula. Remember I said we were going to look at Vulpecula tonight. There's the stars of Vulpecula. And there's this little weird asterism here called the coat hanger. And right below the coat hanger was a nova that brightened up to magnitude 6 for about 60 days. It was really kind of cool to find and see. Of course, I looked at it in a telescope, but you almost could see it with the naked eye. It was definitely a binocular object, but that was when I was 15 years old, and that's been in that book since 1976. So we're going to talk about this region a bit tonight, but you can see there's a lot of stuff here. There's some clusters, there's some nebulosity, there's a planetary nebula over here, M27. Have you ever seen the Dumbbell Nebula? That's it right there. So it's all some cool stuff to look at in this area. So this is where I looked at it. This is the roof of the Harvard Observatory in Cambridge, Mass. And I used to do star parties up here with my 6-inch reflector. And in this dome is the 9-inch Alvin Clark refractor, which I used to look at that nova. I also saw Pluto there over 10 nights. We tracked where Pluto was. And I saw all of the planets, all 9 of the planets at that time through this 9-inch Alvin Clark refractor. If you guys don't know who Alvin Clark was, he made all the refractors in the 1800s, all the real big ones, including the Yerkes 40-inch. I mean, he was pretty prolific. He was really well known. And if you can get your hands on one of those, you are a superhero. Next to CAC, there's a guy that has a 50-inch Dobsonian, but he also has a 10-inch Alvin Clark refractor in his garage. And I was like, oh man, how did you get that? So anyways, here was kind of the Nova. There was the light curve of it. This was 1976 October. It was below 6, and then it dripped down into the 1980s. It was below 15. And today it is 18 magnitude. And here's a little information about when it was discovered and how bright it got and the name of the guy who discovered it. And that's where it is in a different star chart. There's another star chart we'll talk about tonight that is also produced by Sky and Telescope. So here's another version of Scalante Plaso. The charts are not spiral bound. They're just giant paper charts like a nautical chart you'd have in a ship. And those are black and white, and they're much better for looking at with red light, but it has a really good comparison of star magnitudes over here. And then just diagrams a legend of what the objects on the map look like. And these are okay. They're a little bit hard to travel around with, but they are much easier to see with a red light, like I said. This is the Scalante Plaso Observatory in Slovakia. And those are the guys that did these charts. They were hand drawn, like I said, in the 1940s, 1948. The Sky and Telescope, Sky Publishing, the ones that make Sky, bought the rights to this, and they've printed it ever since. And the one that I have was printed by Sky Publishing Corporation. The cool thing is that Sky Publishing Corporation was right down the street from the Harvard Observatory, and I walked into the office and bought it direct right from them. I didn't have to send away and get it mailed. I just picked it up right in the store. It was kind of cool. So today, within the last 2 months, since we started observing with binoculars, I decided to get an upgraded chart called the Sky Atlas 2000, which goes down to a dimmer magnitude than the Scalante Plaso, and it was produced by this guy, Roger W. Sinnott. This is also produced by the Sky and Telescope, Sky Publishing. But here's what it looks like inside there. And you can see now that little asterism that looks like an upside down coat hanger is called Brocchi's cluster. And I marked on here where that nova was, but you can kind of see there's Albireo right there, which is the last star, or actually it's the beak of the swan or the bottom of the cross. And then over here is the Dumbbell Nebula. And then you can kind of see there's a lot of interesting M56. I've never looked at M56, but that's right up here by Albireo. So that's the Sky Atlas. But I cut and pasted this and saved it because of some of the references to what they used to create it. Borland Turbo Basic, Apple Power Macintosh, all that kind of stuff. Those are from the early 90s. And then the 34-pound paper, 25% rag, all this stuff. It was made by a company in Woburn, Massachusetts, which, what the heck is Woburn? Everett. Everett was where my dad was born and my grandmother lived. Woburn was where I was at a house in 1969, or was it 68? And I watched on a black and white TV at somebody's house the Apollo 11 landing. And that's kind of the place where it's in my heart is Woburn. So that's why for me, that was interesting. It was just kind of a walk down memory lane. So this is the one that I use at the binoculars for several reasons. This one is at least as detailed as the Sky Atlas. It doesn't go down as far in magnitude, but it's very handy. And then there's a jumbo edition of it that has larger stars, and it's just the same as what's in here. It's just a bigger view. It's very expensive. This one probably costs about $30, and this one's about $120. So this is what the pocket spiral bound star atlas looks like. It has the constellation lines in it, which none of the other ones do. The other ones are just the stars, which is kind of handy if you know what the constellations look like. Um, but you can see the star magnitudes are in here. And you also notice on the side here is a degree chart. This is your deck degrees. And we're going to talk about why that's useful in just a little bit. But you can kind of get an idea. I mean, Jeff Johnston and I were looking for this M109 right here for a couple of nights and we weren't able to find it. But look how close it is to that bottom star in the Big Dipper. And it just wasn't dark enough for us to pick it out. So we're going to keep working on it. So it's easy to carry. It fits right on your forearm. It's very sturdy and it's very convenient when you're there on your binoculars looking through your tripod. You can look down and say, oh, I need to go from this star pattern to that star pattern. It works out very, very well. So let's see. Here's a close-up view of it in all of the Milky Way there through Perseus, and you can kind of see all of the colored objects. Again, when you're looking at it with red light, those things kind of fade out and are more difficult to see with red light than if you look at it in monochrome. So this is actually a pretty useful atlas, this Cambridge Star Atlas, and this is another Amazon acquisition. I think it was like $35. And this is also by Sky Publishing. They make all of these charts and so forth, but here's a blue version with white stars, and this is actually very, very useful in red light because the blue turns to black and the stars really pop out, and it's very handy to look at. But they also have the same star chart that the other ones have, with one big exception. You can see there's our Brocchi's cluster down there. The big exception is they have a list of things that are on this chart so that you can start looking for things like double stars for your binocular observing, variable stars, open clusters, globular clusters, planetary nebula. So Messier objects that are in here. It will list you the right ascension and deck and the magnitude that you're going to expect. But I like that in all of the charts, there's a little table at the top that shows you what's down here in the chart. All right, so those are all the types that I've used. Another one of the astronomical leave challenges is to look at variable stars. And there's an online version of the digital sky charts, and you can create your own sky chart that's pretty detailed that shows the star of interest and stars around it that you can estimate the brightness. So here's R Scuti, and R Scuti is a star that's up right now that you can look at. And you would compare that against these, like 6.5, 6.0, 9.0. And you would ask yourself, is it brighter or dimmer than those stars? And you would record it. And over several weeks, you would get a chart that showed the dip and the up and the down. And it's near Sagittarius, so now's a really good time to look for it. But it's right up here by Beta Scuti right there. I think this is Beta Scuti right there, 4.2. So anyways, on their website, there's a planetarium video that talks about how to find it and some of the history of the wild duck cluster, which is right here. It's a V-shaped cluster. And it was a pretty good video. It's like 3 minutes. It's not, and it'll might get you interested in doing variable star observing. It's kind of interesting. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about how you can adapt your field of view of your binoculars. Is everybody familiar what field of view refers to? Well, on your binoculars, generally either on either side or in the middle for these Nikons, there'll be a 4.2 degrees, which is how big the circle is that you're looking at on the chart. My 20 by 80s are 3.4 degrees. I think your 25 by 100s are going to be 2.4 degrees, which is very small compared to your 12 by 56s. So what you do is you get yourself a caliper. And don't freak out, these are not very expensive. And since I know that's 4.2 degrees, I go 1, 2, 3, 4.2 degrees right there. And it says it's 36.49 millimeters. Well, then I have this, that's from the Star Atlas 2000, and every one of your star charts will be different. So you're going to need to measure for the star chart you're on how far that degree is for your binoculars. So now this is actually a Jeff Johnson innovation. He said, get yourself one of these circle diagram drawing things. These are for drafting to draw circles and find this 36-degree circle. Well, guess what? You've just identified your field of view and you can slide it around on your chart and see what you can expect to see in your binoculars. And here's Brocchi's cluster again. And you'll be sick of hearing about Brocchi's cluster by the end of the night tonight, but I thought it was interesting enough to see what it would look like in my binoculars, and there we go. There's my 4.2 field of view. So you can get I talk a lot about Harbor Freight because they're easy to go and grab stuff. You don't have to wait for it to get shipped. For $1.99, you can get these cheap ones that aren't digital. And the digital ones, these ones, you can get for $19. But you really only need these. And I think this is the Pocket Sky Atlas. You can see it's much smaller. It's 25 degrees, but it's the same 4.2 degree field of view. And I have to go to the 26-degree circle. Again, Brocchi's cluster there would look like that. And it's about the same field of view that we saw with the 2000 Sky Atlas in the Pocket Sky Atlas. Does this make sense? All right, everybody's like, I won't use that. I'm going to use Stellarium. All right. All right, so let's talk about finding Brocchi's cluster. It's a great thing to look for in binoculars, the coat hanger. It's upside down coat hanger. It was actually called Al-Sufi's cluster in 964. This Persian astronomer discovered it. And Colander 399. I'm not familiar with the Colander catalog, but it's right between Alberio and Sagitta, so it's pretty darn easy to find in your binoculars. So here it is. There's also a YouTube video in here about Brocchi's cluster and the history of it and how to find it and so forth. And you can click on the picture there and it'll get you to it. All right. So here's a Messier object chart that I found. And I can't remember where I found it, but it certainly had some interesting things that popped out at me. Look at where similar things are that Messier discovered. If you start over here on the left, you'll see he mostly found a bunch of globular clusters. And then when he got over here towards Virgo and Leo, he found mostly galaxies. And then as he went further towards to the right, he started finding lots of open clusters and so forth and so on, and then a few more galaxies. But I just found that as interesting that he was finding similar things in similar regions of the sky as he went along and started discovering stuff. Anyways, I have another chart. These are finder charts of the Messier objects. They're not very detailed at all. They're designed for a TELRAD. And if you could see the little circle target here, a TELRAD is something that you put on a telescope. That's a finder scope that's just the same magnification as your eyeball. And it's very handy to get pointed towards the region of the sky that you want to observe. So these books were also on Amazon. I think I found them in a used bookstore for not a lot. I think they were like $40. And the handiest thing about them is they give you a description of some factoids. So if you're at a star party, you can say, hey, that's 20,000 light years away. Hey, that's 87 light years across. You know, those kind of facts people like to hear. And it's like, that's where I get those from when I'm doing a star party. So I keep those handy. And you may or may not want to have those because there's other star charts, but I like having them around because they're like an encyclopedia of the Messier objects. There are some that are missing that you really can't see with a Telrad. So like M57 is not in here. So you just have to be warned that some you won't find. Oh, all right. So any questions about finding stuff on paper before we move on to electronically? All right. Are you guys still with me? All right. I heard a voice. All right. So we're going to switch gears again. We're going to talk about finding things electronically. And probably the biggest, most common one that people use because it's free is Stellarium. Now, it's not entirely free. They actually have a web version of it as well. But you can put it on a variety of operating systems, Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 11, an ARM processor. Um, and it also comes in a different version called Stellarium Mobile, which is what we will use if we go out in the field because it works on your phone or your tablet. And you can get it on the App Store for your products, your iPhone, your iPad, and your Android devices. And that's what I have is an Android tablet. And I was trying to get it logged in as another user so I could show you a live demo, but it didn't like that I was logged in from the same IP address with two different users. So that didn't work. All right. So this is kind of what the interface looks like. You can see if you click on an object, it'll show you a little bit of information down here about what that object is. You can center on it. You can turn on and off things. If you click on the constellations and hold it, you can turn on different things like the lines, the names, the drawings of things, and landscape. You can turn off the landscape. You can change it to night mode and be red. You can turn off the atmosphere. It's handy during the day if you're trying to plan the night to turn off the atmosphere because you can see the sky as it would look like when you go out. And you can actually advance the time to the nighttime hour that you want to observe.
Hey, Jim,
So, yeah,
is Stellarium Mobile free? I seem to
Stellarium
remember
Mobile is
you had to pay for that.
Stellarium Mobile is free,
Okay.
but we're gonna talk about what the not free part of it is next and why you want to get the not free part of it. So there's Stellarium Mobile, and then there's Stellarium Mobile Plus. And Stellarium Mobile Plus costs $19. And it was the best $19 I ever spent because you see this circle with my telescope name on the top of it? That's Stellarium Mobile Plus. Those are called ocular views. And there's Brocchi's cluster there through my C8. But you can also put your binoculars there. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you create that ocular for your particular binoculars, but that doesn't work in the free version. It only works in the plus version. And so yeah, there's no way around it. You want to get the plus version and spend the $19. But there's more stuff that you can get. Here's my 16 by 50s right there. And you see all these things you can change over here. You can change the sky culture, and that'll change the names of the constellations, the shapes of the constellation, the names of the stars. I use the Arabic Al-Sufi because that's the name that we all know, and the constellation names we all know. But you can play with that, and you can change it to modern. And instead of Cygnus, it'll say it's the swan. Instead of the scorpion, it'll say it's the fishhook. And it's just very confusing for me. And it'll say Sagitta is the arrow. And I mean, I just like to have the names I've learned over time. But if you're a different person, you may want to set it to be more meaningful names to you. And they have probably 20 or 30 different sky cultures you can change to, like Chinese and Greek and just a whole bunch. You can play with it and see what happens to the constellations. But anyways, here's that ocular view of my Nikons right there, 16 by 50. And I'm clicked on something there. I was clicked on the Nova that we talked about. I clicked right on it, and that's where it was centered. NQ Vulpeculae is the name of the nova in here. So these are my 20 by 80s right there. That's what this field of view would be. And you can see how much narrower of a view I get in my 20 by 80s. And then here's where you set that stuff up. So when you click on, I'll go back again here. Oh, let me go back a ways here. When you click on, do I have it? This right here, this little circle with a dot in the middle of it. If you hold your finger on that, it'll open up this menu right here, and you won't have anything in it but the tell rad and the 1 degree circle. So you just click the plus sign there, and when you click the plus sign, it'll ask you for some stats. And the number one stat is, or the two important stats for binoculars are the objective width in millimeters and your field of view in degrees. And once you have those two things, you'll get a circle right here that will show you what your binoculars are going to look at on the sky in stellarium. I think it's pretty handy. So for example, I wanted to look at this SH8283, and here's my binocular, my C8. I know that I would have to go over and see this star pattern, then go over and see this star pattern to find that if I were star hopping. Hop, hop, 2 hops for me to get over there. But in binoculars, it's much easier to see the star patterns and to hop. But that's the point of the circle is you find your star pattern, you match it up in your binoculars, then you move to the next star pattern and so forth and so on. All right, so I just want you to take note of the information that's in here when you click, and it says NV Vulpeculae is now eclipsing binary. That's actually not the nova. The nova is NQ Vulpeculae. But I thought that was cool that there was a binary there that's 12th magnitude. And that's something you could probably just about get in your 20 by 80. You could probably see that. And that'd be a good one to try to split. But this is the kind of information that's in Stellarium. If you click these little arrows, it takes you to that screen and to that screen. It'll give you the alt as, the hour angle, the deck, and the RA. So if you needed to find it on a telescope and punch in those numbers, you could. All right, so I recently was introduced to this Sky Safari app, and I went on to cloudy nights and I looked at what people were saying about it. And I got to be honest, I kind of dig this app. There's a lot more functionality in Sky Safari than there is in Stellarium. And I'll talk about some of those functionalities in just a bit, but I have an open mind here. I'm very biased towards Stellarium because I've used it for so long and I'm so used to it. But um, there's some really cool stuff in here that Stellarium doesn't do, like really good images of objects, plate solving. If you take a picture with your phone, you can plate solve it. Plate solve means you look at the star pattern and match, and the phone would know where it is in space. So it'll know where you're pointing. Um, so it has a bunch of databases. It was, believe it or not, it was 2 GB was the star database in here. And I had to save it on my SD card on my tablet because 2 GB is a lot of space. They have a lot of space on your phone too. But they had a lot of different databases, and this Gaia database is super, super detailed. Okay, and like I said, it's 1.64 GB. But if you download them all, it's 2 GB. All right, so here's what it looks like when it's not in night mode, and you can click the observe button here and change it to red. Here was the NQ Vulpecula right there, and there's a Cygnus down here and Sagitta right there. There's Alberio and Sagitta, and that's our area of interest right there. And this is what NQ Vulpecula looks like but you notice all the details that it's showing you here. My current lat long, I probably should have blurred that out. But the dates, the time, the current RA, my field of view. I like all that information. That's kind of handy if I'm making a screenshot or saving the screenshot. And you can camera save your screenshot. It's kind of nice to have all that information documented. So here's the information when you click on that. It has a little bit more information. It's just organized differently. It's the same information as Stellarium has. It's just a little bit nicer looking and easier to read at night, I would say. All right. So last one I'm going to talk about. I know there's probably a dozen more that we could talk about tonight, but this one is a free one. It's actually a website that you point at, and it's called Astro Hopper. And it's really designed to be on your phone and sit on top of your telescope. And then you put in an object and it'll tell you which way to point your telescope to see that object. But I was thinking, why couldn't you stick your phone on top of your binoculars and do the same thing? Well, I'm glad you asked that because we're going to talk about that in a minute. But when you just go to the website, it's not very detailed. Here's Vulpecula again over here. But you have a setup menu by clicking on the little icon right up here. And your setup menu, you can actually turn on and off things. And you can change the star magnitude. Right now it's set to less than magnitude 4. You can pump that up to as whatever you want. And DSO is less than magnitude 5. I pumped it up to like 7 and 8, and it came up with a lot more stars than you see over here. So you can play with that. You can start to see some of the deep sky objects are starting to appear in the field of view. So I said, well, why can't you put your phone on your binoculars? Well, I came across this golf cart phone holder. I don't know if you could clip that to the rod in the middle of your binoculars or not, but I said, there's hope. I bet you someone's figured out a 3D printed bracket to put your phone on your binoculars. And I'm going to keep looking around for that and see if we could figure that out. But Astro Hopper, like I said, is free. It's pretty easy once you get it calibrated to just say, I want to go to this object, and then it gives you an arrow that points right at what you want to point at. And it's pretty darn cool to, when you set it on your telescope, you just move the telescope and the arrow gets smaller and smaller until you get to your object. So in my book, that's cheating, but that's okay. So I did kind of a snapshot comparison of some of these apps. And Stellarium or Sky Safari actually has 3 levels of Sky Safari, and that none of them are free. But Stellarium Mobile you saw is free, and I recommend before you spend any money on Stellarium Mobile that you get the free version and try it a few nights and see how you like finding things with it. And then if you decide, hey, I really need that field of view, well, then pull the trigger on Stellarium Mobile Plus. You get a few more features um, that you didn't. You have 3D view of stuff. You can look at an observing calendar to see what's coming up. You can see the moons of Jupiter and where they're going to be tomorrow night and so forth and so on. And you can actually, believe it or not, if you have a Wi-Fi controlled telescope, you can control your telescope right from Stellarium. So you would click on an object and say, okay, telescope, go to, and it'll slew your telescope to that object. I haven't tried that yet. I've never been able to really get my phone to chat with my Skywatcher GTI mount because it's an IP address and I don't think I have the port right. But one night I'm going to get it figured out and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a go-to and figure out if I can point my telescope using my phone. That would be kind of fun. Sky Safari, like I said, I'm getting warmed up to Sky Safari. I kind of like it. I had $12 in Google Play points, so I bought the $9.99 version, and I'm playing with it. But everybody on Cloudy Nights was saying, don't waste your time. Go right to the premium version. They're up to version 8 now. And you can see that you get the instrument ocular stuff is in version 8 and telescope control is in version 8. So Sky Safari Premium is probably equivalent to Stellarium Mobile Plus. One thing about Stellarium, though, that is not true about Sky Safari so much is that there's a desktop version of Stellarium that you can play with. And I think I have that running in the background here. Hold on a second. Give me just a second. I had it running in the background. Yeah, here it is. Nope, nope, nope. Where is it? Where is it? Come on. There it is. So can you guys see that? Or are you just seeing my screen share? So here's what my 20 by 80s look like tonight looking at the moon in Stellarium. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And if I change this is the desktop version again. There's my Celestron 20 by 80s. There's my overwork 20x80s. What do you notice? My field of view and my celestrons were 4.4 degrees. And that's probably the incorrect, but my overworks are 3.25 degrees. So you can notice how the moon changes. And here's my Nikons, which are 4.2 degrees. And here's my 25 by 100s. Notice how big the moon looks in 25 by 100s. Bernie, what are your binoculars? Do you know
Uh,
the
they're they're well, 30 by 125s.
Vixen Bernie scope? And your field of view is what? Can you tell? Doesn't it say on it somewhere?
Yeah, I think it says 3 degrees.
3 degrees, okay. Oh, three, not six. And you said 127?
125s.
Okay. And I'm going to move those up. It comes with a bunch of stuff in here that you have to go through and clean out, but I'm gonna put Bernie's eyepiece there and close out of that, and I'm gonna go boom, there's Bernie's Vixen scope. Where is it?
Yeah,
Oh, wait a minute.
you left
I
the
I
lens covers on.
I did. Well, I screwed up because I said your magnification was 125. With your eyepieces in there, what's the magnification with the eyepieces you have in there, roughly?
That's a good question. I don't know.
How many millimeters is it?
Hold on a second. Another room here.
So you have to check the little box that says binoculars. Oh, and by the way, Stellarium Desktop is free. There is no premium version of Stellarium Desktop. And you can do all this ocular stuff in Stellarium Desktop for
You
free.
know, I got Sky Safari on my phone as well, but it says Pro, not Premium.
Yeah, they've changed since version 8. So you had the same level as premiums. You probably can do all that stuff.
I'll have to check on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there is a middle version called Pro, and I didn't compare that because I ran out of time
oh,
and space
I
on my
was wrong
slides.
here. The field of view is 1.5.
1.5,
1.6, 1.6.
1.6. And I just need to know what eyepiece you have in there.
I don't know that they're marked, to be honest.
I'm going to say it's a 20 millimeter. And let's see, 125 divided by 20 would be
125 by 30.
30.
So
Okay.
be 90,
So this is 30.
30s.
So 90
Yeah,
power.
huh?
I'm going to say it's
That
90
that
power.
30 by 125s.
Okay. So let's say it's 90 power. And that's what it would look like. That's what it would look like in your binoculars compared to my 125s, compared to my 20 by 80s,
Yeah, that's about right.
compared to my Celestrons, compared to my Nikons. I bet
That's
my
about right.
Celestrons are wrong. Um, hey, Rob, do you have your Celestrons right there?
In the box.
Your Celestrons in the
Yeah,
box, huh?
the box.
Well, I tell you what, if you I'd go look at mine. I have mine downstairs, but it can't be 4.4. I think it's 3.5, I think it is.
I'll see you for sure.
And it's 20 by, so you said your binoculars, Bernie, are 30s, right? 30 by 127s?
30 by 125.
125. Okay, let's adjust that for the Bernie scopes. Let's say it's 30 power by 125s. And that's what it would look like. Does that kind of match what you see in your binoculars when you look at the moon?
Mm, I don't look at the moon all that often. It is so bright.
So bright, yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, at some point in the future, we're going to talk about filters and binoculars, and we'll talk about solar filters and polarized filters to look at the moon. We'll play with some of that stuff um, when we're out in the field and see what difference it makes. But we'll have a night where we talk about that subject. But anyways, that's kind of the desktop version of Stellarium. Let me get out of this objective view here. And here's you can see this is a different sky culture up here. And I've got some things turned on that I probably don't want to have turned on. Here's the constellation art right there that you can turn on. These are asterism lines. I'm going to turn those off. And asterism labels, I'm going to turn those off. So I've got constellation boundaries turned on in theory. But if you look and you hover over the bottom, all of your icons will show up down here. I can turn off the landscape there. I can turn off the clouds, and then look how cool the Milky Way looks when you turn off the clouds, huh? But that's what the atmosphere looks here tonight. But over here on the left, you've got another set of icons when you hover over it, and you can click right here, the viewing options, and you can go to the sky culture, and you can change it right now. And here's, like I said, modern right here. And notice how it changes the constellations and gives them different names like the Scorpion and the Southern Crown and the Archer and the Serpent Bearer. So I'm not used to any of those names, the Eagle, the Dolphin, the Arrow. I don't know what those names are. So like I said, I was using the Arabic name Al-Sufi up here. And that kind of matched what I knew the constellation names were and the star names and so forth, so on. And you can adjust the magnitude of stars, and you can turn on and off the deep sky objects. There they all are. And again, you can click on one like, I don't know what the heck M25 is here. Let's see what that is. M24, a star cluster, is basically a cloud. There's M6. What's M6? Another star cluster. But interestingly enough, there were just a lot of globular clusters and open clusters because it's the center of the Milky Way here. And that's what Messier found when he was down there. All right, so back to the presentation here. Any questions about Stellarium so far? Let me resume from here. Slideshow, get out of my way. So, come on. There's an enormous list of functionality on Sky Safari's website. If I can move advance here. If you go to Sky Safari's website, here, Sky Safari, just look it up on the web, and there's actually another tier in the middle here that costs $17 called Pro, and I think that's what you have, Bernie, is the Pro version. And I'm not sure if that had the ocular view in it or not, but I know that the premium had all the functionality that Stellarium Mobile did, so that apples to apples, apples to apples comparison. All right. So guess what? We're at the end, and we're almost at the end of our hour. Anybody have any questions about finding objects on paper or electronically? All right, hearing none, I'm going to move on to the next meeting stuff. If I can get Kevin Busarik from Oboworks to come in and talk to us about how to buy the right pair of binoculars for you. We're going to start early, 5 o'clock, and I know that's when everybody gets off work and I apologize for that, but since he's in Eastern time, I want to accommodate him a little bit so that he doesn't have to come on too late. But he's a great guy. He has a YouTube channel that he talks a lot about binoculars. So look for Oberwerk on YouTube and you'll find a lot of useful information. All right, so who's had a chance to look at the binocular calendar? Hey, hey, we've got a meeting going over here. The dog. Who's had a chance to look at it? Well, nobody's had a chance to look at it. Anyways, I'll show you where to find it in just a second, but it comes from a website called Time and Date, and I put in all of our events in there for the next up till the end of the year. And if you look, I've also taken the information off of the TAAA website and put in the days that TIMPA is open and CAC is open, the moon quarters, when our Zoom meetings are, and any other kind of events. Right now, I don't have any events scheduled at all other than the one we did on June 4th. So this goes through March 30th for all of the opening stuff. But there are no Zoom meetings after December. So the Zoom meetings, in case you didn't know the pattern, follow the full moon. So the binocular Zoom meeting October 29th is actually 4 days after the full moon because I figured that nobody's going to be out observing during the full moon. So that would be a good time for us to get together and talk about what was happening. So I'll show you how to get to this. It's pretty easy. But before I came to this meeting, I was on this meeting, which is Learn to Stargaze. They have a astronomyclub.com, and every Thursday night they do what's called the happy hour, astronomy happy hour. And this guy right here, John Reed, I've got him tentatively booked to come in and talk to us on September 24th. Again, he's even worse off. He lives in Nova Scotia. So if we could start that meeting at 5 o'clock, that would be good for John's mental health. But he suggested we meet on his channel. He'll record it as a YouTube, and then we can participate in his weekly happy hour, and he'll talk about his book. So the subject this month will be the books that we can use to find things out. And John has written several, but the thing that I show as I talk people into getting into the hobby is this book right here, which is really good. And if you don't have that book, it's $15 right now on Prime Day on Amazon. You really need to have that book because it really helps you divide up what by season, what's available and what's visible in binoculars, and how to find it on paper. All right. So thank you. What do you guys notice about this email list? It's just me, right? There's no Jeff. Well, Jeff has decided to step back from being a co-leader of the binocular group. He just had a lot going on and wasn't able to do it anymore. So I need someone as a co-leader for the binocular group. And I don't expect anybody to jump up on this meeting, but I'd like you to kind of ponder. The biggest hole in the binocular group now is I just need someone to schedule some time out at Timpa or CAC or up in Reddington Pass and just put it on the calendar. And a night when the moon is third quarter or it's new, or even if it's first quarter, if we want to go up and look at the moon. But the calendar will help you pick a date. But I really need help with that aspect of doing the binocular group. Does that make sense? All right. I don't hear anybody jumping up, so I told you to email me. So that's it. That's the meeting for this week, or this month actually. Let me get back and unshare my screen.
Thanks for putting all that together, Jim.
Yeah, hopefully you guys got something out of that. I know that that's how I do it. You may have a different way to do it, and that's okay too. I'd love to hear about it. Like I said, I wasn't aware that Sky Safari was a thing until this week and started researching it. And I said, hey, wait a minute. Oh yeah, the calendar. Sorry. let me show you how to find the calendar. Underneath the spreadsheet that everybody should have the link to, there's a tab that's called Utilities right here. And on the Utilities, on line 22, is the observing calendar. And if you click it, it's just a PDF that you open, in theory. And you can download it and have it for yourself, and you can see it up close, and I'll wait till it gets done loading, and you can see the tiny little font that is all of the meetings. So tonight is June the 25th. So here's our meeting right here, June the 25th, the Binocular Observers meeting. And on the 29th is the full moon. And then on the 7th is the third quarter, but Timpa is open on July the 7th. That might be a night for us to go out to Timpa. If you guys have never been at Timpa, it's a pretty neat place. It's got an excellent sky to the south and to the west. To the east, it's kind of the light dome of Tucson. But if you really want to look at those objects in Sagittarius, that's your Huckleberry right there. And I may do that. I may go out there the 7th or the 8th or the 9th, and we'll put together a go out to Timpa. It takes about an hour and 20 minutes to, or maybe an hour from downtown Tucson. But from the east side, for me, it's about an hour and 20 minutes to get out there. But
You're
it's not
talking
a
about
bad
in
drive
July?
in July. Yeah.
Pretty hot.
Well, it's going to be hot and it might even be rainy. But I'm just saying that that's the next day that they're open out there. It's a hosted open night where Steve Ferris will open it up. So
Is that
actually,
a,
they have 4 nights.
is that a Tuesday?
I think
Did I
it might be.
mishear
Yeah,
something?
it might be a Tuesday. Let's have a look. Let's see. That's a Tuesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Weird.
Astronomy stops for no person.
You're not sharing any screens in case you're wondering if you were trying to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me share my screen again. Hold on. I apologize. I unshared it. Let me share again. I got to go through all that again. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording because I'm not going to show the world where how to get to this stuff. So let me stop the recording now. Yeah. Boom. Stop recording. All right, now it's just us guys talking.